Hello and welcome. In this lesson, I will be giving you a quick walkthrough on an API testing platform called Postman. Postman is used to test APIs, and that means to send requests to APIs and to understand how the responses from those APIs are structured, and then how to handle them. Before that, let us have a quick recap on REST APIs. Usually the client, which could be your browser or an API testing platform like Postman, would send a request to a server, and that server is going to send back a response. So for example, I want to visit google.com, and I go to my browser, and on my address bar I type in www.google.com. What happens is that my browser sends a GET request, or generally it sends an HTTP request to Google's API, and then a response is sent back to the client, which is the page, the web page. This is just a general overview of how REST API and the regular client-server relationship works. HTTP requests are sent in various forms, or rather in various methods. There's the GET request method, the POST request method, the PUT method, and the delete method. Each of these request methods have their expected actions and outcomes. The GET request is usually used to fetch or read data from an API. So for example, I visit my Facebook profile and I view my profile, my relationship status, my posts, my friend requests, and all of that. That would usually be done by a GET request method. The POST request method is often used to create new resources. So usually, if for example I want to register on Facebook to create a new account, or I want to create a new post on my Facebook, or add a new picture, the client is usually going to use a POST request method, because it's most often used to create new resources. These are not restricted, or they are not all encompassing expectations for these request methods. They are just the most often used scenarios. The next one is the PUT method. The PUT method is usually used to update. So say for example I made a post on Facebook and I want to edit the post. Scenarios like that would usually use a PUT request method. And fourthly, the delete method is usually used to delete, as the name implies. There are several other request methods. There's the patch method, there's the copy method, there are a whole lot of other request methods, but most often, and in most cases in our subsequent lessons, we would be using these four. So back to Postman. In this lesson I will just be giving you a quick run through of how Postman works, and then how we can begin to use it in subsequent lessons and on your own in testing your API. So to download Postman, you can visit the official download page postman.com/downloads, and depending on your system specifications, your operating system, you would be able to download the app here. And if you prefer to use the web version, or if for some reason you are not able to download it, you can also just try the web version here, and it will require you to create an account before using the web version. So I already have Postman installed, so I will just open Postman here, and this would usually be what you would see when you open Postman. You would see a blank workspace here, just similar to how your web browser would look. And to create a new tab, I will just click on the plus button here, and then I have a tab from which I can send API requests, or rather HTTP requests. On the left here, I have this drop down that contains a list of HTTP request methods that can be used. You can see the get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head options, link, unlink, and some others. So this would be for me to select what request method I want to use. So say for example I want to use the get method, and then the URL of the API I'm trying to send the request to. For this lesson, we'll be using a sample data API, JSON placeholder.typical.com/users. It contains a list of objects here. As you can see, each object represents sample data of users, and each user has an ID, a name, a username, email address, phone, website, company, and you can see the structure of all the objects in this array are similar. So I'm going to head back here to Postman, and before using that API, I'm just going to show you that you can use this to send HTTP requests to whatever server. I'm going to send a GET request to google.com, and wait a little while for the request to be sent. And you would see that down here I get an HTML code as my response. You can see doc type HTML, whereas if I were to do this on the browser, what I would get back would be the Google homepage. But like I mentioned, this is the response from the server, which is HTML content. So because Postman is not a browser, it just prints out the HTML content that was sent back as response from that server. So you can see all of the HTML code that is in the Google homepage. Currently, I have these options of how to view the response. I can choose raw, which just prints out the whole response without any form of formatting. I can click on preview, which will give me a sample of what to see. You can see the HTML is now rendered as a page. Visualize does something else which we may not be able to do now, but mostly we would use the pretty option here, just so that the response is well formatted and we can interact with it more in a more friendly way. So I'm going to send a request to this API here to fetch. What this API does is to fetch a list of users. So I'm going to send that on Postman. And when I send, you can see the response is an array of objects, and each object contains user details, just like we saw on the page earlier. So different parameters that can be sent with requests, for example authorization, which we would treat in some subsequent lessons, headers, body, which is usually used when we are sending a post request. Remember I mentioned that a post request is usually used to create a resource. So for example, if I wanted to create a post, or rather if on this API I wanted to create a new user, I would be sending something of this nature. If I want to add a new user to this user data, my own user data also has to match this format, and then I would use a similar object to this, and I'll be sending that to this API depending on what route I'm to use to create a new resource. So say for example, let me head back here so we can see how they specified it. JSON placeholder.typical.com. Down here you can see there are different sections. You can have a similar version of posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, users. All HTTP methods are supported, so I can send a GET request to /posts. I can send a GET request to /posts/1. So let's try sending a GET request, or rather a post request, to /users to create a new user. So I'm going to select the post request method here, and I'm going to go over to the body here and click on raw, and when I click on raw I can type in some raw JSON data. So I'm just going to paste this here and just update this. Let me make this, let me take off this ID and make the name Michael Smith, and username should be Mikey, and the email mikesmith@april.biz. I'm just going to leave the rest of the objects as it is, and let's see what happens when I send this request. And the response says that I've created a new resource right here. So if I send a new GET request now to the same API, and I scroll down, okay, I do not think it's storing the data I'm sending, but it does allow us to have a sample of how the HTTP request methods work. I can also get a single user by their ID. Of course, you would notice that the ID is unique for each user. In in increments of 1. Each person has a unique ID, and I can just say /users/1, and let's see what it gives us. So it gives us just the user whose ID is 1. So this is pretty how the REST API is structured. I can send a put request to update this user, and to do that I would let's say I want to change this user's name from Lynn Graham to Graham Lynn. I'm going to just update that user here and just say name is Graham Lynn, and you can see the status is okay, and it gives me a dummy response that the user is updated. If I try to fetch a user that does not exist, for example, and I say /user/200, it gives me a 404 not found status right here. So that would be a brochure for the HTTP response codes that was treated earlier. So the 404 means the resource was not found. If I try to delete the user with the ID 2, it says 200 OK, and that means that user was deleted. So in our coming lessons, we would be using Postman a little more often to test our API, to send requests, and we'll have more fun with it. Thank you.